Hello, my name is Jason Tompkins. I use the pronouns he and him. I'm on the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's National Loss and Healing Council. On behalf of AFSP, I want to say thank you for joining us for the International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day, also known as Survivor Day. This annual event began in 1999 after being designated by the United States Congress as a day on which those affected by suicide can join together for healing and support. As part of today's program, we're going to start by watching a special AFSP produced film called Healing Together: Culture, Community, and Suicide Loss. It's a short documentary that follows three families who share how they navigated the loss of their loved one to suicide. Throughout the film, families reflect on their approaches to grief and the healing process, while also acknowledging the importance of community and culture. Their insights show that it is possible to find things like renewed meaning, forgiveness, and even joy in their lives while continuing to honor the lives of those they have lost. After the video, we will come back together, and I'll be joined by three panelists who have each lost a loved one to suicide. We'll continue the discussion that started in the film here as we each share together. When I come back, Paul will join us. He lost his brother in 2009. Sam will join us. He lost his twin brother in 2014. Janice will join us, and she lost her son in 2020. I myself have lost my mother to suicide in 2006, and my brother died from suicide in 2021. It's my hope that you find the discussion here today both supportive and informative as you journey your own grief. Before we start the film, I'd like to tell you a story about my first Survivor Day. It was in 2008, 2 years after my mom, Judy, died. We didn't have a local chapter for AFSP in Tampa where I lived, so I, maybe like you today, was home alone and streamed the video. I wasn't sure what to expect from the video or what to expect from my own reaction. So I decided to set my laptop up in the kitchen while I unloaded the dishwasher. I thought the film could be good background noise while I did chores. Well, as you know, it's almost impossible to make suicide loss background noise. I identified with many things in the film. I recognized the sadness and the grief very well. I shared in the tears that I saw on the screen. I felt anger like the people in the video did. I identified with that and so much more. I also saw something that surprised me and shocked me, really. As the panelists spoke from time to time, and I wasn't sure, but just maybe, I'm pretty sure I saw one of them smile. And as I kept watching, one of them made a silly joke and the entire panel laughed. I thought, how in the world does someone find a way to laugh after a loss like this? If those people can do it, then maybe, just maybe, I can too. And I did. That was 2 years after my mom died. And here I join you again 2 years after my brother died. Sharing in the experience of feeling sad and all of the things, but still looking for a smile. I hope that's your experience today. Now, without further ado, let's watch our film. I'll see you back here for the discussion in a few minutes.
I love going fishing. Sometimes I just grab my rods and I'm going fishing. I'm out there for hours. He knew that I enjoy it, that it's part of my therapy. Sometimes we'll catch something, sometimes we'll just be out there. But it was something that we would do together. So I miss all of that. I miss going fishing with him. You know, I miss going with my oldest son.
Through his teenager years, he did Taekwondo. He was a black belt.
He was an Eagle Scout.
Yeah.
He did all of the merit badges. He did all of that.
He enjoyed being doing something, being
keeping
involved
himself busy.
in something. Yeah. I miss what could have been. He should be married by now, maybe 1 or 2 kids, because we talked about that. And I was supposed to be playing with my grandkids now, and that makes me sad and miss him more.
I think it's a culture where we don't really talk about it. In the Latino, it's like you don't talk about mental health, you don't talk about suicide. But that showed me that just like having a physical illness, mental illness should be treated the same way.
When we went to Utah to pick him up, to bring him home, I was telling Rodolfo, I need to talk to someone. I need to talk to a counselor or something to help me, because I can't lose my mind. I have 2 small kids, and I have to be fine, because you feel like all you get destroyed. And then I found a place here in the area, and we begin taking family therapy. We did that for 6 months as a family. But for me, I couldn't like get out of that numbness, and I needed to do something else. So I was taking therapy, and the doctors began trying, after 6 months, begin treating me with medicine. But it took time. Having my guy next to me, him being patient with me and helping and being there.
This is Carlos. Carlos was about 9 or 10 years old on that picture. You know, it brings a lot of memories, and in the memories that it brings are great memories. Like that one. That one brings a lot of great memories. Obviously, the one we're all together as a family brings a lot of great memories. And as we come and go every day and our daily things, we just stop and see these pictures. And that's why we keep them here. We want to make sure that it's always there. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
You know, I think at the beginning it was a lot of culturally, I'm Latino, so I had to be the macho that, I'm gonna make sure that the family is well and I can't cry.
He is very quiet about his feelings. Yeah, he normally doesn't share how he feels.
And I think it's that taboo that prevents us from being upfront and say, I feel sick. Yeah. A few days ago, I was talking with a couple of friends. And their kids are graduating from college. They're thinking about getting married. I'm like, geez, I miss those missing moments. I miss that graduation from college. Carlos was very excited of going to school.
Yeah.
In my case, my faith helps me a lot. Scriptures and praying. I think it's important for us to get involved.
Yeah.
I think there's so many amazing kids out there.
Yeah.
You know, fantastic kids that for a particular reason, whatever the reason is, they feel alone. So one of the reasons why I get involved is to show them that they're not alone. That's our way of reminding him. That's our way of remember Carlos.
It takes time. For me, it takes more than 3 years, but I could laugh and I can really feel that I am me again. So I'm getting better. I'm going, after my kids more and being funny with them, and they don't like it. So I'd say, okay, I'm being me again.
Carlos taught me how to be a dad through his patience and his humbleness. One of the things that will comfort me, that we are an eternal family, and we know that we're gonna see Carlos again. And I always dream of just putting my arms around him and say, so tell me, what happened? What's going on? Because I miss all of that. I mean, just having a conversation with him.
When we were growing up, we would go here with Chris all the time. Yeah, I feel like at least once I saw Chris eat an entire pizza by himself.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember what the favorite kind of pizza was. Was it the Supreme style?
Supreme
style,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So we'll have to order a Supreme today.
Yeah. I mean, he could eat, that's for sure.
He can definitely eat, yeah. Chris was, he was brilliant. He was kind. Did not accept things at face value. He was courageous enough to challenge people if needed, even our parents growing up, which I wasn't always great about doing.
He was always a big character, but he could have those quiet, intimate moments with almost everyone in the grade. I feel like he was probably one of the most liked people.
He was a very passionate person, and he was really good at making you be interested in what he was interested in as well. So he was very infectious in that way.
He was a junior at the time. And so I just remember we were sitting at home together and we got that phone call from Dad about how we lost him. And I think we just both started crying and holding each other. Yeah, it's definitely one of the most painful moments that I can remember in my life.
Actually, earlier in the night, I was playing Halo with Chris, and then my friend called me and told me, and I don't think I went to bed that night, and the next week was awful.
I think just seeing all of Chris's friends just come over the first few days was it's just really hitting me, especially going back to school. It's like everybody knows, of course, so it's like being able to navigate that as you're already trying to figure out how to be, in 8th grade and everything else that's happening in puberty. But at the same time, going into high school, being a freshman while you guys were all still there, seniors, it did make it easier in that way. Very bittersweet, but easier to be surrounded by, all of Chris's friends.
I think that was something that I always counted on was, you, Rafe, and all of Chris's friends, just knowing that you were there to look out for Daniel, because I was always so worried about what that high school experience was going to be like for you, like you said.
Yeah.
Your family was really great support. I mean, like I still have an Iron Man shirt of Chris's. Like they gave a lot of his friends his various shirts and things like that. So like with a nice sweet note, they just kind of got us involved.
You know, it's always hard, I think, for Asian American families to talk about feelings and be open about a lot of these things, you know.
The landscape was different back then. I feel like mental health awareness is much greater now than it was 14 years ago. I think we struggled to talk openly about it. We still struggle to talk openly about it.
That's kind of the natural, you know, way that we're probably all raised. And, you know, I don't know if that's more of a cultural thing, the way that our parents were raised, you know, but yeah, I think it's something that we're trying to do better at.
Right. I think sometimes when something is terrible, as this happens, right, you feel like you're the only person in the world who is experiencing it. I think for me personally, that helped me a lot, just knowing that I wasn't alone.
It's still just going to take a while to kind of process. I still have him like kind of idealized in my mind as being older and like the kid I was looking up to. And then just knowing now, you know, being almost 30 years old, like Chris was in 11th grade. The healing's much slower, just thinking of the potential, you know, the untapped potential with Chris.
I think as a big brother, right, like you want to be able to protect your brothers. So that was just the hardest thing for me to be able to move past, just knowing that I wasn't able to do that. I think a lot about him with Mary being in the world now and just how much my daughter reminds me of Chris. I mean, I feel like they even look like each other. I think the biggest thing for me was just feeling like life could not go on and just feeling like, okay, you know what, like life can go on. It's never gonna be the same, but making it, seeing that you both are making it has helped me heal. But I know the idea was that we wanted to find something that we could all do together.
You started off cool. I'm starting it off, really?
Daniel and your group of friends, Chris and Rafe and that group of friends. So basically the 8th graders, the juniors, and then my group of like, you know, 24-year-olds who had just gotten out of college. Those 3 different groups coming together on Sundays to play basketball at the school. And just knowing that we were all there together every Sunday to just play basketball, something that Chris loved, and just to be with each other. And just feeling like we were okay, getting lost in the game for a few hours made it feel like it was a shock that we would be able to survive.
I got you. Everyone, good game. I made one.
She was already such a light. She came out beaming. She would put her light on and just lit up a room. She was the best big sister ever. It was the sweetest thing. She would teach him things. Always trying to get him to read or learn his letters or numbers or whatever. She'd be like, oh, good job, Solomon, Good job. Watching some of the things she went through, not ever being fully accepted in one group or another,
Right.
that was really painful to watch.
I just always felt as a father, it was hard to take the pain away from the things that she experienced, particularly when she was in Arkansas, when she would be told, you look pretty for a black girl kind of thing. And, you know, her always being pulled over in this town, you know, because she's of color, and her getting, you know, different treatment than her white friends.
We lost Ella in her 24th year. I still don't always understand it. I still go back and think of the could've, would've, should'ves. I have lots of conversations with things. I talk to my grief. I talk to Ella. And Ella knew she was loved.
Yeah.
She knew she was loved. But love isn't always enough.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, she was loved. I think the other thing that got in my way at the time was I was not fully present with my drinking. And I feel now that I'm sober over 3 years now, I feel like I wish I had that sobriety with her. I'm hoping I could have helped her more. And that's whenever I'm at my lowest moment, just when I'm thinking about what if I had been there more present for her, you know, and
She is so proud of you.
Yeah, I know, but it's tough. It's,
She's so proud of you. She's up in heaven doing those happy dances for her dad.
Yeah, I know, but I just wish I could have took the pain away. The pressure of graduating and all this stuff, the pressure of her being different than where Solomon was at. She's still struggling as a firstborn. It's hard. I mean, I just know I need to know that we did the best we could. She had all the support and love she could ever want. A lot of people would question their faith, but I think it helped strengthen my faith because it helped me get through prayer and the scriptures and also the people we talked to that helped us get through it too. We also reached out and got help through our support group to be around people who had lost in a similar fashion and to learn from that and to understand that, you know, you're going to have your ups and downs and that was very critical. And not just you and I going there, but Solomon going with us and then us doing therapy together.
Lots of
collectively,
therapy.
individually, as a family. You know, January 23rd, 2018 was the worst day of our lives. And, you know, I still think that we're making a difference now because we're trying to help others not go through that pain, but it's a pain I wouldn't wish on anybody.
If we can change and help one person, we will do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And I think having a black husband and a black son speak publicly about their vulnerability and their loss and their pain, and us doing it together is something that not only that to help other people, but it helps us.
Yeah.
The neighborhood decided to do something for Ella. They said they wanted to put up something in her honor and had come up with a bench. It always makes me happy when I see a young kid sitting here. Just think it's a nice spot to sit. It's always in the shade. And
I stop by sometimes when I walk around here just to meditate and just think about her and just life and what we're doing now to help make a difference and how she is helping us make that difference.
We had people talk about her not going to heaven. What did we expect? We didn't raise her in the right church. We had people just not want to talk about her. Like we're just not going to mention her at all.
Life's too short. After losing Elle, I realized just I don't want people like that around that don't understand us, don't understand her, don't understand love, because that love is, to me, it's conditional. I knew nothing about mental health, mental illness. I thought suicide was for white people. She was in so much pain that was the only way out at the time. She wasn't thinking logically. She had a mental illness. She, like someone dies by cancer, she died by a mental illness. It's like those kind of things. And I learned that. And so now I think it's important to teach people that, in particular people of color. It's important to talk about your mental health like you talk about your physical health, like your spiritual health, your physiological health. All those things are important.
We made an agreement to not judge each other's grief or experience.
Yeah.
My experience wasn't easier than yours.
No.
Yours wasn't easier than mine.
Yes.
It was all awful.
Yes, yes, it was, yes.
It was all awful. I know on the anniversaries and the special days, it's almost always the day before where I am brought to my knees. And I don't think, that we can't expect to not be brought to our knees. Solomon said something, he said, I think I have my grief under control, and then it gets me, and I'm like, son, you don't ever get to control your grief. You can't fight it. You can't put it in a box and put a lid on it till you have time to deal with it. But you can look it straight in the eye, and you can make it your friend, even when you don't want it. It took us all a long time to smile, like really smile. But I remember smiling and not feeling bad about it, realizing that I'd smiled and thinking, I don't have anything to smile about. Why am I smiling? But that moment was also a moment of light, like just a sliver, a tiny little sliver of light that gave me some hope that I would smile again. I think we started smiling in spite of ourselves. We started smiling for Ella. I think all of us believe that Ella would want us to be loving life. Like if we're here on this earth, we get to have joy. We get to have light and love. We have a responsibility to find light and love and joy. It doesn't mean the grief goes away at all, but it does mean that we also get to have that. We get to have it together, we get to have it with Solomon, and we're still a family. The four of us are still a family, and we always will be.
So welcome back to our panel discussion. As you can see, I have a full panel of loss survivors here who are going to share their experience with us. I'm going to just kind of take a second, let each of them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves and what they would like us to know is in the way of introductions here in the beginning. So I'll call each of you out. So Sam, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you here today?
Well, first of all, Jason, I want to thank you and all the AFSP for having me on this panel. I think there's a lot of value that comes from this, and the other two individuals, including yourself. I'm excited to hear your story and about the loved ones that you've lost. I'm here today because I lost my twin brother to suicide in 2013. He was just an amazing, funny, generous individual. I could go on for an hour on the type of person he was. We lost him at 24 years old. And, ever since then, it's been a passion of mine, a passion of my families and friends to do whatever we can to keep somebody else from enduring the same pain that we've all endured. Since then, we've raised $370,000 or close to it for the AFSP and mental health organizations alike. And I'm here today because his story is not over. I think there's more that I can do. There's more my family can do while remembering him. So that's why I'm here today. And I just want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Sam. And what's your brother's name?
Jake.
Jake. Jake.
Ake.
Thank you. Thank you. Paul, maybe you could introduce yourself to us in the audience.
Sure. Thanks, Jason, and thank you, Sam. I echo everything that Sam shared just now. And Jason, I was very moved by your introduction. I know that the audience got a chance to see a little bit of my story in the film just now. I continue to do events like this and work for the AFSP, like Sam said, to keep the spirit of my brother Chris alive. We lost Chris to suicide in 2009. And so, events like this are my way of trying to honor his memory and help those who are struggling, either as suicide survivors or beyond, right? And so I think that, for me, participating in events like this is, hopefully contributing to that overall cause. And also selfishly, I think it helps me feel a little bit better about my own grief and how I process it over time. And so just really, really grateful to be here with you all today.
Thank you. Thank you. And Paul, your brother's name was Chris?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Janice, could you introduce yourself to us in the audience?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I also want to thank the AFSP for giving me the opportunity to be on the panel and to share my story. I'm here because we lost our son, Justice Lafayette Robinson. He was my oldest son. We lost him to suicide on June 24th, 2020. A little bit about him. He was a senior attending Bowie State University in Maryland. We're here in Maryland. And he was just a very giving, loving son, best friend to my youngest son, Jared. Just a regular kid, going to school, and just ex-swimmer in high school, all around kid, Eagle Scout, just a great person. And I got involved with the AFSP in 2021. I went to a walk at the Annapolis community walk. And that's how I found out more about the AFSP. And I like the resources, and I felt like a lot of the information that they produce and share, it's written in a way that anyone can understand it and utilize it. And I felt like it helped me. Although I was angry at first because I felt like if I just had some of this information that maybe I could have, done something or said something differently. But I do this to honor my son. I do things to honor my son. And one of the things I did was to organize a community walk at his university, Bowie State University. And that was April 22nd this past year. And it was so supportive in the community because we don't talk about suicide in the African-American community. it's kind of a stigma and discussing mental health and suicide. So I choose to be transparent about my son's life because he was a great person. I'm never ashamed of him. He did wonderful things. So I want to share his story so that people know he was just a great kid, and it can happen to any family. Uh, it just can, even regular families like ours. And so to honor him, I helped to get the walk at the school, and we raised literally $19,000 in almost 3 weeks. And by the time the walk, we stopped collecting funds, it was about 23,000. So the community was really supportive of the walk and came out to support. So I'll continue to stay involved because I do want to spread hope that we hopefully can save lives, and I don't want other mothers to go through what we've gone through.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you each for being here and sharing your story. I love AFSP's simple mission to save lives and to share hope. Like, what better mission could there be than to do that? And this year's video, I really appreciate it because it focused so much on culture. And Janice, you were talking about this a little bit. Each one of you maybe can think about this. Carlos's dad, Rodolfo, talked about how in the Latin culture, there's a sense of machismo, meaning that you don't talk about your emotions. The men are tough. The men don't feel. And how his work was, in a way, coming to terms with, wait a minute, I'm a man and I cry. I wondered if you each could speak about the supports and helps that your culture offered you in grieving. 'Cause I do think it's a two-sided coin, but maybe some of the more problematic parts of your culture, if you will, that kept you from being able to talk about that. Janice, do you mind continuing since you kind of started with that, and then we'll move around?
So unfortunately for me, it was horrible because I will say we were the first family that I know of that spoke about it to lose someone to suicide. And when church members called to express their sympathy, and the first thing someone said was, "We won't tell anybody what happened." And I immediately said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not hiding this because I'm not ashamed of justice. So I can't grieve." And this was literally the next day. I said, "I can't deal with that and trying to hide what happened." So it struck me, but it wasn't surprising because no one talked about suicide. And I literally had many people come to me after, even family members, and they say it in a whisper, "Well, such and such tried that." And it's a stigma. It's such a really bad stigma that family members whispered. No one was around, but it's just such a hard stigma that it's still lowered voices and we won't talk about it. And I just, so there were no resources at my church. I understood there was a ministry getting started, but it had not started. So the church was very supportive in terms of helping me with arrangements. But as far as counseling and support from that, there wasn't any. The counseling was private that we received. The support was, no one really knows what to say, and I understand that. But we were on our own, I'll just say. And if you recall, June 24th, 2020, we were in the middle of COVID. There were no vaccines. So we literally had to deal with this in an isolated environment. From the service, we couldn't have a regular service. And people could cycle in and out, that kind of thing. Everything was just hard about that time because we were not even living in regular times. So I don't blame any organization or anything for the limitations, but it's just there was nothing. We dealt with it on our own, unfortunately. And in the AFSP was kind of my first venture out. I started Googling things, just looking for things, and but it was hard. It was hard.
You kind of had one tragedy layering on another one.
Exactly.
Kind of have the sense of like trying to find a place to catch your breath.
Exactly. And what did help me was a family of someone later from my church. She heard about our story, and she reached out to me. But I opened her card probably a couple of months after because I was going through all the condolence expressions, and I found the card, and she asked me to call her, and I reached out to her, and she had lost her daughter. And actually talking to someone who had lost a child, a young child, it's like similar to my son's age, that helped because we could share and have honest conversations and be open. When she asked me how I was doing, I could really share it. That was helpful.
I hope that's the benefit of everybody watching the video today, or people who might be in their local communities watching it live, is they don't feel alone. Yeah. Paul, can you tell us a little bit about, kind of both sides of the coin from your community and culture, and what was helpful and what maybe have been difficult?
Yeah, I know that my brother Daniel touched on this a little bit in the film. I think similar to what Janice shared just now, and what Rodolfo shared in the film. My experience as someone who identifies as Asian American is that this is not something that we talk about openly. I think when it comes to emotions in general, we also abide by the strong silent type that Rodolfo was talking about. And so, I think that there were a lot of challenges with that. And for me, our loss is of course much further in the past. 14 years ago, it's a long time. And the world has changed so much since then, right? I think I mentioned in the film how mental health awareness is so much better today in 2023. I remember in 2009 feeling a little uncomfortable going to a therapist and wondering if I would be judged for that. I remember The Sopranos being very popular around that time, right? And the kind of grief that Tony Soprano's character would get if it ever came out that he was seeing a therapist, right? And so obviously I don't see myself as a Tony Soprano, but I felt that kind of stigma and potential shame at times. And thankfully the world has changed, I think, in a positive way in that sense. I think in general, when I think about my own family, we've gotten better at talking about it, just as Rodolfo shares in the film, and Daniel and myself. I think it's something that we're still working on. It's obviously just such a difficult, painful topic to talk about. I'm not an expert when it comes to the research, but I have read a little bit about how Asian Americans in particular, suicide is one of the leading causes of death amongst the age group is 15 to 34. And so Chris was a junior in high school at the time. And so he was right in that range of vulnerability. And so, my hope is that these days, mental health awareness being less stigmatized, that resources are more available, and that through panels like this and films like this, that we can raise awareness in all communities, but particularly communities of color, where I think these topics are heavily stigmatized, not openly talked about, and they need to be, right? I think that's one of the first steps towards healing and feeling like you're less alone, is just being able to talk openly about it with other people and making connections, doing things like this great walk that Janice was mentioning. I know I participate in the New York City walk every year, and I always find a lot of healing and peace just knowing that there are others around me, strangers that I've never met before, who understand my pain, understand my experience, and makes you feel less.
Yeah, I'm hearing that theme, less alone. And I know when I found out about the losses in my life, there's that sense of, oh my gosh, where do you go? And then how refreshing it was for me. There's a support group for people who've been through this. There's therapy for people who've been through this. There's friends who've been through this. So that feeling of not being alone. And Paul, you mentioned the Sopranos and that image of Tony sitting in therapy, and he talks about being the sad clown. Out here he's Mr. Tough Guy, but in therapy he's really a sad clown. And I think this kind of loss gets right to our sad clowns. Well, it gets us right in the gut.
Absolutely.
And how about your cultural perspective on kind of going through loss? What was helpful and supportive, and what may have gotten in the way?
I can't speak to culture like to like Janice and Paul here, but I can speak to the overarching culture that was 2013. And it's going to echo a lot of what Paul said as far as the time, a decade plus ago. And, I got a quick story to kind of give you an idea of what type of culture there was and the stigma that existed, even unknowingly sometimes. Before my brother passed, he had moved to Oklahoma City about a month prior for a job he took there. And, we talked every day, as twins, we spoke frequently. And, I knew everything there was to know about him. A lot of it was nonverbal communication. If we're in the same room, we just, we knew what each other were thinking. You don't have to tell me to change the channel on the TV. I know to change the channel. That kind of mindset. We're just that connected. But leading to his death, he moved to Oklahoma City, and slowly I start noticing things. He's acting strange. He's acting just different, not as normal, happy-go-lucky, hey, dry sense of humor. Something's off. And I remember this particular moment in time where his girlfriend at the time it texted me, and she said, hey, Jake's being really weird and he's freaking me out. And my first reaction was like annoyed. I'm like, why do I have to deal with this? Like, I'm in St. Louis, you're in Oklahoma City, figure it out. So I call him, and he's in the bathtub, and I can sense in his voice he's been crying. And I say to him, I think to myself, what the heck are you taking a bath for? I've known you for 24 years. You're not a take a bath kind of guy. So instead of seeing some signals, some red flags here or there, some yellow flags, if you want to call them that, I tell him, hey, will you cut it out? Like, you're freaking mom and dad out. Like, just figure it out. This pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't know what your deal is, but cut it out, because you're making my life tough. And that, I was, subconsciously perpetuating this stigma surrounding mental health, because I was an uneducated 24-year-old on suicide and mental health. No one was talking about it back in 2013 and prior. So, that if I, his own brother, am perpetuating this culture of, stigmatized, let's not talk about it, figure it out, imagine everybody else. So, the journey that I've gone to, I've done a lot of self-reflecting, and I didn't come to those, it wasn't until like 2 months ago that I think of that story and I'm like, man, I messed up. So there's a lot that's, I think a lot of good has been done in a decade. I think the AFSP has done a bunch in 1 decade, that I hope that those situations like that are much, fewer occurrences. But that was the culture, and that's the hurdle at the end of the day we have to beat.
Yeah. I think you're speaking, Sam, to an experience that maybe not all, but certainly a lot of survivors have, and that a feeling of woulda, shoulda, coulda. Should I have taken that call differently? Should I have handled that differently? My last interaction with my brother was about him coming to visit me in Florida from Mississippi. And I said, hey, if you're coming, you might want to grab this Airbnb. It's going to go real fast. And he just wrote back, okay. And I thought, man, I've been through so much with him. I didn't have the energy that night after the long day of work to kind of engage. I'll call him tomorrow. And sadly, that was the last interaction. And so there's a sense of regret. And I that's not easily dealt with. But I will say, more often, we don't know how many times we gave our loved ones another day. So both of those things exist. And it's kind of the burden of us survivors to navigate both of those things. Right. And it can really easy to get caught in one or the other, but we really gave them both. You all talked about, each one of you, interestingly enough, the way the world is different, the world around, the idea of stigma and how suicide is now, we say that word now, like that's a big change. And I'm also wondering how each of you are different, not just the world, but your internal world. I think of Iris Bolton's poem. She talks about living life and wondering and enjoying life in a way that she never thought possible. If you know Iris Bolton, she wrote the book My Son, after her son died. I'm probably butchering her poem, but the idea of loving life more than she ever thought possible as an outcome of this kind of loss was kind of like finding my smile in my first Survivor Day. So I'm wondering if you all have nuggets like that, or if there are still ways that life is more painful than it used to be, because we need to speak to both sides of that. Who wants to go first? I'll leave it open this time.
I can start if no one minds. You know, for me, it really, you know, I've said journey here a couple times, and it really has been a journey. I'd love to say that in 10 years things are completely great, and you know, but it is much better than it was. But I just mentioned a few minutes ago that, you know, last month or so, I've kind of reflected a bit on that night in the weeks leading up to that night, and that's kind of new for me. It's been a new journey, part of my journey, that I'm starting to reflect more. I'm giving more of these panel discussions. I'm being more part of these, which is forcing me to reflect on those nights that I didn't recall before, or I buried, because, you know, you're wearing this mask. They had mentioned that during this panel last year, wearing a mask, being macho, and you know, I for 10 years have been doing that. And Phil Tyler spoke last year, and he talked about, you know, feel free to be, you know, a hot chocolate mess is what he said. And that sticks with me. That stuck with me, that, you know, this is a year where I feel like I'm going to start being a little bit more of a mess. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's something that I've been holding down, I feel like, for almost a decade now, because I'm constantly, you know, part of conversations about suicide, and not a poster child, but somebody that's fighting to end the stigma. When in myself, I tend to perpetuate a stigma, not take care of my own mental health. So that's where my journey has taken me. And it's new, like I said a few months ago. So it's new for me, and it can be scary. But the point of that is, it's not this linear, hey, every day is better than the last. Right. It's ups and downs, and you're figuring it out. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm figuring it out on the fly.
Yeah, you're talking about taking care of yourself, and it reminds me in those early days how hard it was to be selfish. And taking care of yourself means being selfish, and that's not a cuss word. We can be selfish and still be healthy. But I think that's really important for the people to hear today. Paul, Janice, you know, which one of you like to talk about how you've changed?
I'll jump in. I've evolved, and I think I'm still evolving day by day, honestly, because you're right, Sam, each day is different, because there are different triggers that, such as going to a meeting in places that I used to go to was no problem, but something my son used to help me prepare to take my things and put them in the car and take them out of the car. And you would think something like that wouldn't, but I had to end up changing that meeting and going to that group in that location, because it was too triggering and I could not shake it. I tried, I'd go different ways. So you would just, even though I've evolved in a lot of other ways, some triggers I can't shake, and I have to find ways to adjust, because it's just hard. And I think I've gotten stronger, because I could have never sat here and talked about justice in public like this. I just couldn't have. But what has helped me was in my work with the AFSP and organizing things and having a chance to tell his story. I table. And table is when you go to different events and you present AFSP materials just to talk to people. And a better one-on-one talking to people, because I can share my story, they can share. And being able to talk about justice helps me keep his memory alive. And it makes me feel like he's kind of right here with me. I always tell people he's with me in spirit. And I really do feel like that. And so talk it through the time that it took to get the walk underway, and talking about him and talking to other students on the campus, that's made me stronger. And I never would have expected that, because at first I was like, how am I going to do this? But then as time went on, I found that it helped. So I think there's hope in, you know, in honoring your loved one in the way that you can, when you can say their name. And I do little things like when I go to the restaurant and we have to give a name, I always say justice. I say, and that helps me always say his name. So
Mm.
just being able to say his name and keep his memory alive in any small ways like that, that's how
Yeah.
I evolve. And I won't say it's easy. It's just you just keep choosing to continue to keep going.
Yeah. There used to be the mentality that when we lose somebody to whatever the cause of death, that healing means getting over it. And I think now what you're saying, Janice, exemplifies this idea that we don't get over it, but we can grow stronger. That's the word you kept using over and over again. You are stronger. And it takes strength to say our loved ones' names after something like this. So thanks for sharing. Paul, what's different about you?
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. I connect with so many of the things that you all shared, and I think that's what's wonderful about events like this. Just feeling that sense of connection. 14 years, right? So for me, I think I'm the longest on the call here. It's changed a lot. In the beginning, similar to what Janice was saying just now, I would have never been able to do this. I was breaking down, crying multiple times a day. I was teaching middle school math at the time, and I remember just breaking down in front of my students one day, which is, as a middle school teacher, you never want to do that. And so it just shows you how far I've come in terms of just being able to um, manage that a little bit better. I think that was the hardest part, is because the grief and the pain was so new. It took me years, quite frankly, until I felt like I could kind of pick and choose when I wanted to confront it, right? Because to your point, it never goes away.
Right.
It's always there. The grief, the pain is always there. The world is always going to seem a little bit less bright, at least for me.
Mhm.
So I think, it changes over time tremendously. I think the things that helped me were, I know we mentioned in the film, but we were doing these weekly basketball games on Sundays with my brother's, my brother Daniel's friends, my brother Chris's friends, and my friends, and even our dads would join the game too. For a few minutes before they got too winded, of course. And that was just a beautiful way for us all to come together and heal, and just the power of sports and athletics to just kind of take your mind off of your grief for a little bit. And so I think things like that helped. I think in terms of just what I've been thinking about more recently, I was thinking about what Sam was saying in terms of just reflection. I became a father last year. And so that's been a really transformative learning experience for me. And just, my brother Daniel mentions this really well in the film, this idea of Chris and his untapped potential and what he could have become. And so, I have a lot of grief over that now. And then just thinking about what a great uncle he would have been, and how much he would have loved playing with my daughter, Mary. And, I feel myself just getting emotional thinking about that. So,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's constantly evolving. I do think, to the point that everyone shared, time helps. So if you're someone who's watching us right now and you're really struggling, know that time does help, and talking to people, I think, helps. We all process grief in different ways. I know that some members of my family, they just read every book that they could find on suicide to try to just understand it better. And so there's lots of ways that you can try to find some form of healing.
And I'm glad you're talking about books, Paul, because there are lots more resources, I think, today than might have been for those of us who had lost a long time ago. And briefly here, as I start to wrap up, the AFSP website, at the top of it, there's a menu that says asking for help or looking for help or something along those lines. And the drop-down menu says, I've lost someone. And on that page is where there's a wealth of resources, information about this day, about our Healing Conversations program, which can provide peer support to you and your loved ones after a suicide loss. There's even support groups that you can look up and find in your area. And I'm seeing some heads shake. I think if we had more time, we could all probably go through our experiences in support groups and how that was helpful. But the theme that I'm hearing today is the word strong. And I want to offer just a little bit of a caveat here. We can be strong and have an ugly cry at the same time. being strong doesn't mean that we don't feel. 2 days before my brother's birthday back in July, I had a 2-hour break between sessions, and I was a sobbing mess. So it was an ugly cry, but it takes strength to be able to navigate those feelings. And I'm so thankful for you, Sam, and Janice, and Paul for sharing in this way today, and the viewers here with us, to help us feel heard, hopefully to help you all feel heard, and maybe even to find that smile or that joke that we can enjoy again. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone.